You got to love the New York Post, right? Headless man in topless bar. I couldn't wait to see this morning, heading to Wawa. What's the Post headline going to be? Pop this balloon, they say. You know, a number of your comments are really of interest. Sean Nichols, thank you, Sean. What intelligence can be garnered, he says, from a balloon that can't be had via satellite or other methods? A great question. I have a guest on today, a retired general, and I will ask him that question or something very similar to it. And it also begs the follow-up question, which is, did the Chinese want us to see this balloon? Is this all a case of, mind blank, especially with Anthony Blinken having been scheduled to go to China? Let's see some of the other things here. It's cold. It is cold, isn't it? A lot of weather comments because I said the only thing to say today is brr. I normally keep this studio at 67, but not today because I arrived freezing. Dave Hutton, fly, Eagles, fly. Yeah, there's some balloon. Michael Majoros Jr., would you like to ride in my beautiful balloon? Marilyn McCoo. Was that Marilyn McCoo? Would you like to ride in my beautiful balloon? Could the balloon be captured, Barry Rector? I will ask the general, what are our options at 60,000 feet? Fifth dimension, right, fifth dimension. Well, wait, was she with the fifth dimension? Okay, there are a lot there. I'll go back and I'll look at them later. By the way, thank you, Steve Cordasco. Thank you, Mercer Advisors. If you're transitioning to retirement, it's a very important part of one's life. Do it with some expertise, maybe from Steve, maybe from John Walker, the whole team at Mercer Advisors. This is what they do. They guide you through the process, but don't wait until you're 65 or 70 to pick up the phone and call them because you want to make sure that you're planning ahead and can do it in the style or comfort that you're accustomed to. Steve Cordasco, 855-558-3500. Schedule a free consultation, Cordasco Financial Network. That is a trade name owned by Mercer Global Advisors, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Securities are offered through Andrew Garrett, Inc., which is not affiliated with Cordasco Financial or Mercer Advisors. Client experiences vary. Successful outcomes are not guaranteed. Thank you, Steve Cordasco. Thank you, Mercer. Prediction. And you know what time I'm here live, right? It's now Saturday morning at 7:32 a.m. And it's interesting because I've been going back and forth with my CNN crew. Today is the first day of a new programming schedule where my 9 a.m. Eastern program will be replayed at 3 p.m. Eastern, which is really cool. And I'll tell you something funny. It used to be when I began at CNN, we were taping my program on Friday late afternoon. It's like hard for me to believe this now. We would tape the program Friday late afternoon. This is like 8-9 years ago. And the program would then air at 9 a.m. and then it replayed at 6 p.m. And then the replay went away. I don't know, 2015, 2016, not because of ratings. Why do you think the replay went away? The show would air at 9, it would then air at 6 p.m., and then we had to stop that. Donald Trump. Because Trump was making so much news so often that by the time we would get on the air at 6 p.m. with the replay, it was dated. There was no such thing as a Friday news dump or a slow Saturday because it was 24/7 with him. So today is the first day that the program is now going to re-air at 3 p.m., which I really like because I was just last week out on the West Coast. Well, I was in Arizona, close. And, the comment that I heard from a lot of people was, hey, it's hard to watch the show live. I tape it, et cetera, because you're on at 6 a.m. on a Saturday morning on the West Coast. So now that will, Arizona today is 2 hours behind us, but you get the point. But now that changes. Okay, well, here's this balloon story which seems to be, changing by the minute. Now there's one in Latin America that they're keeping an eye on, and so on and so forth. What risk do I run with things that I say at 9 live that might be dated on the balloon by 3 p.m.? Well, I have a thought on this and a prediction. The balloon now is somewhere over Middle America. Okay, apparently the trajectory is headed for the Carolinas. There's no way it gets shot down now. If they didn't take it out in Montana, they're not going to take it out over any of the Midwestern or Southern states. It's just not going to happen because the population is too dense. As I said yesterday, if there were a state that you think would be perfect, like where do you want the balloon positioned so that you can take it out? Montana, maybe Wyoming, right? So if they didn't do it then, to the extent they're going to take it out, it'll be when it leaves the eastern seaboard over the Carolinas and is over the Atlantic. And something else that I want you to keep an eye on, the State of the Union is Tuesday. The State of the Union is Tuesday. Nobody has said this yet. Nobody is thinking this yet. That's the deadline. Because there's no way that President Biden wants to go and speak to the nation in the State of the Union. TC, are you watching? I remind me to tweet this. I have to tweet this and get ahead of the curve on this. Believe me, by the time he gets out there to deliver the State of the Union, this has happened. And if it hasn't, that's a mistake. So prediction, it happens. And thought, it's a mistake if it doesn't. And I'm not alone, by the way. Results yesterday at Smerconish.com on the question of should the U.S. shoot down the suspected Chinese balloon, 63.94%. Okay, nearly 2/3 said yes. What was the sample? 21,637. Okay, it's a shame that it's become a bit of a partisan issue. I think when Donald Trump, tweeted something like "shoot it down now," then immediately, like some people who are of that mindset, then they say, "Oh well, if Trump wants us to shoot it, then I guess I don't want us to shoot it down." And make up your own blanket mind. Who cares who's on what side? Be an independent thinker. But you had Trump and you had Rubio and others who were of that mindset, and then I think that the response from the Democrats is somewhat stilted. It should not be a partisan issue. It's an invasion of our sovereign airspace. Now, today's poll question asks whether this is a matter of national security or national pride. And by the way, I'm not so sure that if you decide it's a matter of national pride, we still shouldn't shoot it down. I think we should shoot it down. That's my view. But I thought of that last night, and then I was reading in today, and I saw this quote in the Times coverage. Mr. Biden is scheduled to give his annual State of the Union address on Tuesday. Jessica Chen Weiss, a political scientist at Cornell University who recently worked in the State Department on China policy, said the decision to cancel Mr. Blinken's trip reflects the unfortunate triumph of symbolism over substance. It also confirms, this is also a quote, it also confirms the low expectations going into the trip that the potential upside should have been so outweighed by the domestic political risks of visiting Beijing amid congressional outrage. So what I think she's saying is, well, what I know she's saying is that if she were answering my poll question, I presume she would be saying this is more about pride than it is security, because she thinks that the triumph of symbolism has taken place here to the detriment of substance. So it's not as important as we're making it out to be, maybe, is what she's saying from a national security perspective. Yeah, I thought this was interesting as well. After initially telling reporters that it had to check on the claims about the balloon, the Chinese ministry said late Friday in Beijing that the balloon's course was an accident. Quote, the airship is from China. It's a civilian airship used for research, mainly meteorological. Oh, I'm going to struggle with that today on TV. Meteorological. Shit, I'm just going to say weather balloon. Meteorological. Papadopoulos, meteorological. Meteorological. I think there's like an additional in the middle of that. Meteorological. That's not the part I wanted you to hear. Affected by the westerlies, this is the Chinese explanation, and with limited steering capability, the airship deviated far from its planned course. The Chinese side regrets the unintended entry of the airship into U.S. airspace due to force majeure. That's act of God, thing beyond your control. The ministry said that it would talk with U.S. officials about how to properly handle this unexpected situation. Okay, so now the New York Times goes to Lynn McCurdy, a professor in atmospheric sciences at the University of Washington, who has modeled the balloon's flight path. That's the person I want to talk to. I love this. It's a plausible explanation, she says, but it's preposterous that they didn't guess it would end up in North America. Well, okay, so they apparently knew it was headed here. For how long did we know it was coming here? And should this thing have been taken out of the sky, somewhere when it was in Alaska? Because I think that's when we first detected it. I got a lot of questions, is the point. I have a lot of questions. But the poll question today asks, is the Chinese spy balloon more a matter, because you're going to say to me both, no, more, forcing your hand, binary choice, more a matter of American national security or national pride? What do you think? National security or national pride? Go and vote on today's poll question at Smerconish.com when you've got a moment after we conclude here, okay? So on the show today, I have Lieutenant General Diptula joining me first, then Gordon Chang to talk about the Chinese reaction. I've been speaking about Robert Waldinger and Mark Schultz's book, The Good Life, eager to give them a platform, or at least Waldinger on television, because I'm just so into it. The key to a long, healthy life: relationships. Not money, not fame, relationships. We'll talk about that on the program today. 2024, David Byler is going to be my guest to talk about what's going on the Republican side of the aisle vis-a-vis the next presidential race. And then Valerie Borline from the Wall Street Journal comes back to discuss with me the very latest in the Murdoch murder trial in South Carolina. This is a really interesting week. I'm telling you, man, go to Court TV and watch some of this. The lawyering is great. The lawyering on both sides is really terrific. And this was a bad week for the defense, in my opinion, because they placed Murdoch where he said he wasn't, meaning at the murder location, and also a wardrobe change that he made was duly noted. Some interesting things, and the real question still unresolved is whether the judge is going to allow in all of the testimony and evidence of his financial shenanigans. I'll tell you the witness who the jury has not heard yet, who really upset me. It's the son of the housekeeper for the Murdoch family of 20 years, who supposedly, with Murdoch, you don't know, but fell down the stairs and died. And he then goes to the kids and says, hey, let me fashion a lawsuit for you, essentially sues himself to collect an insurance policy, but on behalf of the deceased housekeeper. And then he doesn't give the $4 million to the kids. It's like he stole from the housekeeper's kids. Well, so, why does the prosecution want the jury to hear this? Because it makes him out to be a total blanking crumb. But does it mean he's a murderer? They say, well, it goes to his motive. How would that go to his motive that he was stealing all this money? They say, well, he was going to cover up. The prosecution theory is that in killing his wife and son, it was creating a diversion, buying him some time and making him a sympathetic figure. I don't think that necessarily follows. I don't know why killing your wife and son is going to give you any protection from financial crimes. It's illogical. I think the prosecution wants it in. You don't have to prove motive. I think the prosecution wants it in because this guy will be perceived as a total dirtbag by the jurors if they hear some of this financial testimony. So the testimony's been presented in short form in the courtroom to the judge, but without the jury being there, so that the judge can make a decision as to whether it's going to come in. I think its prejudicial value probably outweighs its probative value, but I think the judge is going to probably let it in. That's just my hunch. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, yeah, insurance scam. Well, but Jim Simpson, he didn't have insurance on his wife and his son. It would make total sense if Murdoch were going to collect 10 mil from killing his wife and son, obviously, and not getting caught, then it would make total sense. Yeah, he's going to collect that money and pay off all the debt. That's why he did it. That's a motive. But he didn't have insurance on them. That's why it doesn't make sense to me. That's why it doesn't make sense to me. So the whole classified documents thing blew over by a Chinese balloon issue, says Michael Holm. No, not at all. Michael, this balloon story is going to be over by Tuesday. You have my word as a Biden. And then we'll be back to talking about the classified documents. So, yeah. All right, I gotta get to work. Gotta get my noggin powdered and so forth. Stay warm. Stay warm. You're registered for the Smerconish.com daily newsletter, right? Well, thank you for that. How about if today you share it with a friend? Because we want to build the subscribers. I say subscribe, but it's free. It's free and it's worthy. Give TC some play for TC After Dark, the podcast, and of course, subscribe to the YouTube channel here, and then ring the bell. Right? And then you get notifications for all of the YouTube Live. All right. Thanks, everybody. I'll see you soon on TV, I hope. And 3 o'clock today, the replay, 3 p.m., the replay, unless there's breaking news.